I do feel like the rug kind of got pulled out from them on this most recent quarter. That's what it seems like. I have a lot of confidence in this business. They have a good product, they have a strong background, and they have a lot of growth potential to make for a very solid business. Hey everyone, welcome back to Chipstock Investor. Today we're going to do a very brief update after Aehr Test Systems released a preliminary financial results and outlook for their Q3 of this year. The stock slid quite a bit yesterday. We just want to do a brief update on what we're doing with our Aehr Test Systems stock in our portfolio. And just a reminder, we do post updates on our community board. You can find that under our Chipstock Investor channel on YouTube under community. Nick is really good about posting updates there. And if you would like more real-time updates, you can always join our membership here on YouTube or over on Ko-fi. That will get you access to our Discord channel, and we have much more discussion over there on that channel. It's only $5 a month, and it's a great value for all you get. That's our little plug there for our membership. Let's go ahead and jump into this discussion on Aehr Test Systems.
Right. Okay. So as you can see from that preliminary Q3 fiscal year 2024 update on Monday, March 25th, Aehr stock is back down to its lowest level since the summer of 2022, when we were in the depths of the bear market, both for the market overall and for the chip stock industry in particular. Not coincidentally, the last time the stock was down in the dumps in the summer of 2022, revenue and profit were also hitting their peak. So our outlook really has not changed. We last covered Aehr, and really the story is about ON Semiconductor and other silicon carbide manufacturers. We'll get to that here in just a second. That's really what this story is about, in our opinion. This is not coincidental, folks. Like we've been talking about, we are entering a downturn, and things were going to remain pretty rough and tumble for Aehr as they lap the peak in the cycle and enter the downturn. But the numbers were quite ugly for Q3.
You can see those preliminary numbers here in this chart that Nick created. Q3 2024, $7.6 million in revenue, which is a 56% year-over-year decrease. GAAP net income or loss, they said 1.5 to 1.8 million, which it was 4.1 million last year. And then adjusted net income or loss down 0.9 to 1.2 million, which it was at 4.7 million positive last year.
Now, before we come back to the implied outlook for the fourth quarter, let's hit on what is actually happening here. I said this story was primarily about ON Semiconductor, which up until just the last couple of quarters was far and away Aehr's largest customer at 80%, 90% of revenue. That has moderated. We don't know what it'll be for this current quarter that they just released in Q2 fiscal 2024, which coincides roughly with the end of calendar year 2023. ON had actually dropped to like a 40 to 50% customer as a percentage of revenue. But you can see on Semi here, this diagram they provide of their silicon carbide based chips in vehicles in the bright blue. See them clustered there in the front of that car, in the back of the car, and then the floor of the back seat. That's roughly where the motors are in an electric vehicle, and the battery, of course, and especially some of the equipment that goes into the charger. Aehr Test Systems, as Casey explained a couple months ago, when she put together this chart, is an upstream equipment provider for manufacturers like ON Semi, as well as some of its other silicon carbide manufacturing customers like STMicro, Mitsubishi Electric, Wolfspeed. But what happens downstream with EV automakers and other parts manufacturers for the auto industry obviously has a big effect on those midstream chip manufacturing customers, which in turn can have a really nasty impact on Aehr, one of the more upstream companies. Small business, very small changes in the downstream market can have a really big impact the further upstream you go.
You can take a look at this visual as well. Aehr is not the most upstream where base materials are mined, but it's there at the inspection point, the wafer burn-in inspection point. When you take a look at the press release from Aehr this week regarding those preliminary results, the main story has not changed. There is still an oversupply in inventory for these automakers, and that is driving that downturn in Aehr Test Systems revenue and sales.
Yeah. So basically, what's happening here is the long term demand for silicon carbide chips for use in electric vehicles and charging stations and other parts of the power grid, as well as silicon photonics, which we haven't talked about in a while. Maybe we'll circle back to that at some point, but that's a very small market at this point. There's still long term demand for these devices. What's happening is if you're a chip manufacturer like onsemi and your customers, your automaker customers tap the brakes and say, hold up, we have enough chips for now. Of course, onsemi is going to say to Aehr, one of its equipment suppliers, hey, we actually don't need to expand our manufacturing capacity at this point. Let's just hold off for a quarter or two. So again, just illustrating the outsized impact this can have on Aehr as the ripple effects of the automaker market back up the orders in the supply chain.
In this chart, we're trying to illustrate the cycles that we're currently going through right now. You can see AI infrastructure is a new market, just starting to see ramp up of that. Consumer PC smartphone had a peak in 2022, then a downturn, and now we saw the bottom in autumn of 2023, and we're now at the start of a new growth cycle. Cloud and enterprise, very similar story. But Nick, where are we at in this auto and industrial cycle?
Yes, that's the big question. For on semiconductor, one of our top picks for 2024, as well as for Aehr, we don't know. We don't know when the ultimate bottom will be in. A lot of chip manufacturers have been saying the bottom will be sometime this summer and will mount a recovery the second half of calendar year 2024, but we don't know yet. That's why we started rebuilding a position in Aehr. Remember, we bought in 2022. The hype cycle got really extreme last summer, 2023. We sold due to extreme valuation, and now we've been rebuilding in recent months. But it's a very small position, and we're nibbling here and there because we don't know when the bottom is ultimately going to be in for Aehr and its customers. But we do perhaps have a big hint. Let's back up again to the same chart. Casey, you already outlined the preliminary financials for Q3. What about for Q4 of the current fiscal year, which will end in May, in just a couple more months?
Yes, that implied outlook for Q4, 15.4 million, which is roughly double what their Q3 revenue is currently. So it could be that the bottom is in for Aehr Test Systems and looking to mount a recovery in the coming quarters.
One more slide here of their financials. So the new outlook for the current fiscal year, again, which ends in May, is going to be obviously down from pretty significantly from where they previously had downgraded their financial guidance, but it is still flat from fiscal year 2023. Now, the GAAP net income and adjusted net income are going to be down from 2023, but again, this is possibly just a timing thing. They've built equipment, they've built capacity for their customers, and now they're just sitting on these machines because the customers, it sounds like, didn't say they don't want the machines for their silicon carbide manufacturing. They just don't want to take delivery of them yet. So they're deferring it until the new fiscal year 2025, which again, fiscal year 2024, the current fiscal year ends in May. The new fiscal year starts in June, roughly, of 2024. So in just a couple months, it appears that if this new guidance is to be believed, the bottom is in for Aehr Test Systems. We really want to see what the specific guidance is going to be for fiscal year 2025 before we get excited about buying Aehr Test Systems. So at this point, I think we're just going to hold our nose and continue nibbling on Aehr stock, while the bulk of our bet on silicon carbide manufacturing still is on semi, ticker symbol ON.
Okay. Time to talk about valuation. Last year, when Aehr Test Systems stock price was at its peak, it was trading for 100 times earnings and 50 times expected earnings. Where are we at now with this sizable decrease in stock price?
Yeah, this is where cyclical manufacturing businesses can be very misleading. And I think our general rule of thumb, even for a high growth business like Aehr, is 50 times forward earnings is too much. Maybe something like 20 to 30 times forward expected earnings is a better price to pay for a cyclical business like this, even if it's a high growth cyclical business. And this is exactly why everything that's transpired since last summer when we sold. But as far as the valuation goes, so the market cap as of right now, 330 million. That's based on approximately $11.30 after Monday's trading session. That puts it at about 30 times the current fiscal year's expected GAAP net income, or 23 times on an adjusted basis. Now, we don't know what guidance is going to be for fiscal year 2025. That's what we're waiting for. We should have that in hand in early July. But let's just assume maybe they get back to the previous guidance they had given, 75 to 85 million in revenue. Let's split the difference and say 80 million in revenue and a GAAP net margin of 20%. That would put Aehr at about 21 times next year's expected net income. Again, this is not a fair value estimate from us. This is just something that we're penciling in. We're going to continue our very small dollar cost average build into this position until we have that fiscal year 2025 guidance in hand, and then we'll reassess our small position in Aehr at that time. Okay, what are your thoughts on this business, Casey? I know you have some feelings about Aehr after listening to conference calls the last couple of years.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like Aehr Test Systems. I like management. I like CEO Gain Erickson. I do feel like the rug kind of got pulled out from them on this most recent quarter. That's what it seems like. I have a lot of confidence in this business. They have a good product, they have a strong background, and they have a lot of growth potential to make for a very solid business. It's sad to me that like some investors invest in it and then they immediately drop it when the stock price goes down, because this is a very solid business.
It's manufacturing, right? It's technology, it's chips, but it's still manufacturing. There's going to be ups and downs. It's just inherent in the business model.
That's just our take. And we know that many have differing viewpoints, and that's totally fine. This is just what we do in our own portfolio. But we still have confidence in Aehr Test Systems, and we're looking forward to seeing what they have to say regarding their outlook on April 9th. Next video we have coming up, as promised, is that Broadcom video, and it's going to be on their software part of the business. If you haven't checked out the last video we had, it's on Broadcom and its new XPU or AI chip. Will it rival NVIDIA? So make sure you check that video out. If you have not subscribed to the channel, please do so, and check out our links below to our Ko-fi shop and our membership. We'll see you again soon at Chipstock Investor.